Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be reading another book about George and Martha. And today we're going to pay attention to what is similar about our characters from the first book we read. So let's review what we know about George and Martha. I made this poster after learning about what you guys told me about George last time. So last time I said Martha, something she did was make George some cookies, and I said that made her a kind character. And she also wanted George to stay with her instead of fly away. So I thought that was kind, but also a little selfish because she wanted him to stay even though he wanted to go on a trip. For George, he didn't want to hurt Martha's feelings by uh, not drinking the soup. So I thought that was kind. And then some of you told me that he hid his soup in his shoes, and that was very silly of him. Okay, so we're going to see today. I want you to pay attention to see if these things are the same. Is he doing anything for George, anything silly or kind? And then I'm going to pay attention again to Martha and see if she's being kind or selfish at all. Okay, you guys pay attention to what George does. All right. So George and Martha rise and shine. Okay. And I'm going to skip part of the book so the read aloud won't be too long. Okay. So this is story number 2, The Experiment. So Martha was in her laboratory. What are you doing? Asked George. I'm studying fleas, said Martha. Those are the little bugs. Cute little critters, said George. You don't understand, said Martha. This is serious. This is science. So the next day, George noticed that Martha was scratching a lot. She looked uncomfortable. So that's probably because the fleas were biting her, like a bug bite. So George bought Martha some special soap. After her shower, Martha felt much better. I think I'll stop studying fleas, said Martha. Good idea, said George. I think I'll study bees instead, said Martha. Oh dear, said George. So she's still studying some strange, annoying bugs. Okay. I didn't notice anything similar, so I'm going to keep going. You might have noticed something similar about George in that moment. Okay. Story number 3, The Picnic. One Saturday morning, George wanted to sleep late. I love sleeping late, said George, but Martha had other ideas. She wanted to go on a picnic. Here she comes, said George to himself. Oh, he looks so peaceful. She's coming over. So Martha did her best to get George out of bed. Picnic time, sang Martha, but George didn't budge. Martha played a tune on her saxophone. George put little balls of cotton in his ears and pulled up the covers, probably to block out the sound from the saxophone. So Martha tickled George's toes. Stop it, said George. Picnic time, sang Martha. But I'm not going on a picnic, said George. Oh, yes, you are, said his friend. So George really doesn't want to go, but Martha does. Martha had a clever idea. This is such hard work, she said, huffing and puffing. But I'm not going to help, said George. I'm getting tired, said Martha. So she's pushing him along in that bed. George had fun on the picnic. I'm so glad we came, said George, but Martha wasn't listening. She had fallen asleep because she was so tired from pushing. So again, I was looking for something kind and something selfish that she did. So I think Martha bringing George on the picnic was a little selfish because he was sleeping. But it was kind that she wanted to bring him. So that is kind of similar. She's still being selfish by wanting to go on the picnic, even though he wanted to sleep in. Okay, we're going to keep going. Story number 4, the scary movie. Remember, think of anything silly or anything kind that George is doing in here. It's a scary movie. Martha was nervous. I've never been to a scary movie before. Silly goose, said George. Everyone likes scary movies. I hope I don't faint, said Martha. So she's pretty scared, but she's still going. That's pretty kind of her to go in the movie with him. So Martha liked the scary movie. This is fun, she giggled. Martha noticed that George was hiding under his seat. I'm looking for my glasses, said George. You don't wear glasses, said Martha. So when the movie was over, George was as white as a sheet. Usually that happens when someone is like fainting or someone was really scared. Hold my hand, George said to Martha. I don't want you to be afraid walking home. Thank you, said Martha. Who's the one that's actually scared, though? Looks like George. Okay, and we have one more story, the last story. Think about those examples. Remember, you're looking for something that is showing that George is kind or silly. Okay, the secret club. A club is something that people do together, or they have something that they're interested in. Okay, it's a secret though. Where are you going, George? Asked Martha. I'm going to my secret club, said George. I'll come along, said Martha. Oh no, said George. It's a secret club. But you can let me in, said Martha. No, I can't, said George. And he went on his way. Martha was furious. She's being excluded right now. So let's see what they do. When George was inside his secret clubhouse, Martha made a terrible fuss. You let me in, she shouted. No, said George. Yes, yes, cried Martha. No, no, said George. I'm coming in whether you like it or not, cried Martha. Oh man, George is trying to keep this a secret, but she's still trying to come in. To me, that's pretty selfish again. She's not listening to her friend. So let's see what happens. When Martha saw the inside of George's clubhouse, she was so ashamed. The Martha Fan Club. George is the president of this fan club. A fan means that you like somebody or you admire them. You old sweetheart, she said to George. George smiled. I hope you've learned your lesson. I certainly have, said his friend. Okay, so the whole time he was just making a club to say how much he liked his friend Martha. Okay, and that's the last part of the story. So, looking back, what we read today, let me bring up the chart again. I was looking for things about Martha that showed that she was kind and selfish. I remember that she was being selfish when she woke up George, even though he's trying to sleep in, to bring him to the picnic, and that she went inside the club, even though she wasn't supposed to, though. So she really is a selfish character. Okay? And she was a kind character because she still went to the movies with George. So now, after we look through the story, think about, is there anything George did that showed he was a kind character and silly character again? Because this was the second book in the series. So you can rewatch the Read Aloud if you need and look for things that were kind and silly that George did.